Excited. We're having the Reverend John Simmons back. We got a glimpse of him last week, and as he was the associate for Reverend Lynn Rogers, tonight Reverend Lynn is here with Reverend John. All right, John, you've got the floor.
All right. Well, I hope you do talk at times during this program tonight, because I have things to say, but I really want to hear what you have to say as well. So it always fills out the program completely, or more completely, if we all can share some of our experience. I'm sure most of us sitting here and coming in through the Zoom have had some experiences that let us know that there's more to the universe and more to life than meets our eye or our ear or our senses. Probably wouldn't be here if you didn't already know that, chances are. That may be one of the reasons you are interested in UCM and other churches that look into the more spiritual aspects of life. If you're joining us on Zoom and you have any questions, please put them in the chat box, and Corky will read them, and we'll try to answer them if we can. And if you're sitting here, ask questions. I like to know where your thoughts are and how this is affecting you and what your interests are. And every one of us needs to hear the other person, because we learn from each other. Later on, as time allows, I'll ask you to share some of your experiences that you had in your life that relate to tonight's presentation. Metaphysical awareness and life. Kind of a large subject, a wide area. I could probably talk all day and night on that, and you could probably do the same thing. But from here and beyond. So what we know already with our eyes and ears, and what we know already with our spirit, which is often beyond what we have here. Reverend Lynn Rogers, she's our historian for the UCM Church. She's reviewed some terms and definitions we may use tonight. And Lynn and I kind of work together. Lynn is my teacher when it comes to writing. I'm in her writing class. And so, not wronging, writing. I hope I got that straight. So she's actually able to take my work and make it all kind of flow together, because some of my work is kind of choppy and not quite together. She's got skills that are great in that area. So sometimes we also teach together, and this is one of those nights. So then,
we're going to talk about extrasensory gifts and how our physical senses correspond to an extra sense. Many of us are more visual in our culture. Some are more word and sound oriented, and some are feeling and kinesthetic and intuitive. We feel things. And interestingly, our text, a new text of spiritual philosophy and religion, that if you're in the ministerial program, you'll be studying. It's truly beautifully written and has stood the test of time, and it talks about a lot about gifts like clairaudience and so forth. So I was going to read a little bit in advance of John sharing from his decades of experience about this phenomenon. Psychic writers divide clairvoyance, from the French clair seeing, into two phases, subjective and objective. The subjective phase operates when the eyes are closed and inner visions are experienced. Discarnate forces may also be present with visions to the inner mind of the subjectivist. Objective clairvoyance operates with eyes open. The human aura is seen and read. Etheric people are seen objectively as apparitions. Spiritual conditions surrounding individuals and places are described. So psychic phenomena can be divided into mental and physical expression. Clairaudience, I just found reading today of this very wise book, it referenced people who write whole books because they hear inner words. I've written a number of books, and I begin to hear words inside my mind, and I have to start keeping up with them. And I don't know how John is writing, but I suspect some clairaudience is going on.
Quite often, that's true. And sometimes it'll stop and I'll go, what's next? Yes.
And so he will talk more about telepathy, the most fundamental of all psychic powers, and one most commonly developed and used is that of telepathy, defined as the transmission of thought, mind vibrations from one consciousness to another without physical means. So these are some of the topics that he's going to cover tonight, and we'll dip in and out of definitions here in our text.
Reverend Short and Bob and Shirley were both ministers in the UCM. He also worked a lot with UFOs and that kind of thing. He lived down in Cornville after he moved from San Jose, and he moved to Arizona. Sometimes he would sit down to his computer and hold his hands over the fingers over the type, and would start typing on the screen. He wasn't actually contacting it. He just held it there. That's a pretty weird one, and that was pretty weird for him too. He said, I'm not sure who I'm contacting. He asked, and they gave him a name, but he said, I'm not sure how they're doing this or what they're doing, but I put my hands here, and words start forming on the screen, which of course he could copy and save and do all that stuff with it. So that's how he got some of his information. New age, huh?
Right.
So if you want to try it sometime, see what happens. I haven't had any luck yet. Psychic phenomenon is found in the Bible, as you well know, and this sheet here, the brightly colored yellow sheet, talks about some of that. And so I won't go into all of these. You can spend some time if you want to looking through the Bible and finding some of the passages that are here. But clairaudience is clear hearing. When we're talking, we're not hearing clearly lots of times. Hopefully you're hearing me now, but sometimes we're not hearing each other very clearly. This is clear thinking. This comes in from a higher source, and it's there. And some examples, I didn't put too many examples, but in Acts 9:4, Saul heard a voice saying unto him, Saul, Saul, why persecutest me? Saul was walking alone to Damascus, hoping to find disciples of Christ so they could be persecuted. And he got stopped along the way, and there was no one near him at the time, but he heard the voice talking to him.
Clairaudience.
Yes, clairaudience. He heard it very clearly. I've had a few experiences of that in which someone talked to me in my ear, and they said, ask this question. I'll ask the question, and the person, somebody will go, I'm glad you asked. Well, it didn't come from me, but thank you. I appreciate the attention. Clairvoyance, clear seeing, several locations shows up in the Bible. And an example is Jesus took Peter, James, and John to a high mountain, and there appeared unto them Moses and Elias, who had been gone, had died, talking with them. So it can be people who have passed on centuries before us or a short time before us, in which they do come back and we very clearly see them. I've had that experience a number of times, especially when I'm giving messages, because sometimes I'll be giving a message to somebody, maybe I'm holding an object of theirs, or I just see someone, and someone will be standing beside them or behind them, and I'll say a man with gray hair who's about 6 feet tall, who smoked a pipe, and I think his name is Charles, and they go, yeah. Okay, so that's when that clairvoyance is being accessed. Seeing clearly. It says seeing clearly as a definition of clairvoyance. Honestly, I don't see that clearly a lot of the time. Quite often it's just a form. But anyway, yeah, clear seeing is what they say. Dream mediumship, often prophetic, found in many places in the Bible, including Genesis, and I listed some of those if you want to go look those up. Healing mediumship, Matthew, Corinthians, a lot of places about healing. Telepathy, awareness of another's thoughts or the awareness of your thoughts. Matthew's 9:4 and Luke, there are several places. And then trance, going into a sleep state. And that I've experienced a number of times, especially when I'm giving a talk about something. Someone will come in and stand beside me, and they'll literally come into my body. I can just feel that happening. We were at a Christmas party one evening, and I was sitting there, and I don't normally let spirits drop in, right, because I want to have some control. So I normally keep the light around me, and I keep myself balanced. But I was at a Christmas party one night, and this a couple was there from Hawaii, friends of friends who were at the party, and her sister had been murdered in Oakland when they were living in Oakland, and it was a pretty traumatic event. And that'd been several years before. It wasn't even at all on my mind. And this girl comes up and stares me in the eyes. And she's not there. She's in spirit form. And so I'm kind of looking at her like, well, hello. And she said, I would like to see my sister through your eyes because I can't see her that well from here. She's blurred. I can't really focus on her. And I haven't been able to focus on her since I passed. I said, well, we're at a party. She said, yeah, I know. She's sitting right there. I said, yes, she is. We're having this little conversation, a little psychotic conversation here.
We've all had a psychotic conversation.
This isn't what you're used to having happen at a party, right? I said, well, I don't usually allow that, but if you don't come in too far, just enough to see, I'll back up. So I backed my spirit back a ways, and she came in just, I don't know what the distance would be, about this far, where she could see through her. And she, I see her. I said, good, enough. She said, okay, and she left.
Wow.
So you never know. Sometimes we do service and don't expect it, So anyway, this was sort of like a trance, but you're not gone, you're not out. Some trances you're really literally asleep or you're somewhere else. Other times you're in what I call a partial trance state, and that's an example of that. As we go along, if you have any questions or comments, please don't be afraid to ask. Yes, please.
So I've had a couple of instances where I have gone into that trance that you were just talking about.
Yes.
So I remember, because I wanted to hear physical voices, because I get ringing sounds in my ears.
Yes.
For the left one, it's usually a warning or just letting me know that, okay, this is going to be challenging or whatever. And the right one is usually confirmation or just letting me know something positive.
Good.
So I was alone in my house, and I was like, why am I not hearing physical voices? I want to hear the physical voices. Well, anyway, I went into my trance one night, and this voice came in to my right ear, and it said, you are hearing physical voices, but you need to be in that trance. If you are conscious and you're hearing the physical voices, it's only going to overwhelm you. We need to wait until you're in a trance, so this way you're calm.
Yes, you're right. You're absolutely
Very
right.
interesting.
Yes.
Very, very subtle analysis of that I had never heard.
You're right. That's very good. That comes with being in the body, as we let the body come first. As the stimulation of the body comes first and often blanks out any subtle stimulation we're getting from the spirit. So that's what they're talking about. Yes, please.
There was a time when I was hearing things that were not in a language that I understood, and others, and I finally got to the point where I asked, did I not hear these things unless they were in a form that I could understand? And part of the response I got was, well, your spirit understands. And I said, yeah, but it's kind of confusing for me to hear things and not comprehend the message.
Yes.
On my conscious plane.
Yeah, I think it's reasonable to set limits like that, because this is to a certain extent, this is a limitless universe. We have to set some limits on it sometimes. And so you'll just say to them, I can't accept that. I can't be a part of that because I don't understand it. Put it in terms I can understand, and they can come back or at that point change over and let you know. Yes.
John, do you have any fear of allowing spirits when you're
yes, I do.
Being?
Yeah, I don't generally allow it. If I've worked in psychiatry most of my life, and I've worked with some very psychotic people, and I've worked with some people who are psychotic because they were beset by spirits in real life. This is true. And so I was around them, and they were around me, and I would not allow them to come in to my aura. And if you were a spirit trying to come into my aura, you would just see a mirror. You would just see an energy force that looks like a mirror, and you'd see yourself, but you wouldn't see me. I wouldn't like them to come in unless I controlled it. So when I worked, I made sure I surrounded myself. And also when I go to bed at night, I surround myself with a light too.
And if you go out and drink and
well, I generally don't, but yeah, if I did,
sometimes you're in a situation where you end up in a party atmosphere, I'll put it that way.
Oh yeah, No, that's true. I've gone in bars and seen a lot more people there than are there.
And there's, I don't know if that restaurant still got us or not, that used to be a funeral home.
There you go.
If you had a glass of wine, you would see a lot of spirits there.
Don't get drunk in the funeral home.
I guess this is kind of tied in with certain energy work in that you're supposed to ground yourself and protect yourself, ask for protection from the archangels, etc.
Absolutely. Ask for protection from the archangels, but also protect yourself anyway. They will do that. They will meet your request. But even if you haven't requested, visualize the light. What I like to do is I like to visualize light going around me 3 times. That just feels balanced to me until my energy, is balanced.
Mm,
Then I'm
good
set.
to know.
Yeah. Then I can walk into most anything. One of my jobs working for the county was walking into psychotic system places in the community. People who had guns and were acting out craziness. Instead of sending the police, I'd send people like me in there to talk to them about their psych issues. And so I would make sure I surrounded myself very carefully. And I've had many patients pull guns on me. And I say to them, it'll make a mess. Put it away. We're just here to talk. They go, okay. And it's happened. So far, they haven't shot me. So who knows? There might be something to this protection. I don't want to test it, though, but there have been times when it has been tested, and it's worked. It's been okay.
Yeah, you talked about a bar, and I remember a teacher I had in San Jose, Reverend Marcia Hunter Mossman, who did say that sometimes especially if we abuse a substance, it can make kind of holes in the aura so that the normal protection isn't there.
Good point.
Well, John, I found, for me, I just say white light.
Good.
And I've used it for so many
Perfect.
years that it just goes whoosh. And it works because it's all color, when you think of it. And I suggest anybody who's just learning, start visualizing yourself surrounded by white light. And a good way to do it is look at yourself in the mirror and just visualize white light around you. You're going to be surprised at how bright you start looking because of the white light. And sometimes people don't just cover themselves. Sometimes they visualize it as a ribbon coming down, a white ribbon coming down and completely covering themselves. You can do it in any way.
Yes.
And for me, white has always been the strongest because it does contain all the colors.
All the colors, that's right.
But some people think that pink is stronger for them or purple stronger for them. We're not into saying there's just one color. You can use any color that works for you. We're not colorist, right? Whatever you feel has the most power. Yeah.
Yeah. This is a universe. This universe is huge, as you already know, and so whatever your colors are and whatever works for you is great. But it is good before you step into situations that can be difficult. My body does this. To stop and circle yourself with light entirely. Just inform. And I personally like 3 levels of light, but you can have 1. You can do it your way. Knowing then that you're perfectly protected, then you're ready to look them in the eye and say, okay, what's next? And they'll be with you on that. Or they'll run away from you. I've had people just look at me and run away. I don't know what they saw, but sometimes I actually do know what they saw, but that's not it.
Well, that's the time you had put the mirror up, I'm sure.
Exactly. That's right. They saw themselves, and they didn't like it.
Right.
Our text talks about development of psychic sensitivity. One of the most mysterious and misunderstood of all human faculties is that of mediumship, or psychic sensitivity. The very word medium has been so abused and misused that many writers prefer to use uncolored terms like station, channel, sensitive, or instrument. Simply defined, a medium is one whose nervous system, aura, glands, and total mind-body organization permit higher mind vibrations to register from the invisible. A medium is a channel through which something is said or done.
That's right. That's in words what we were just having as an experience. Yeah, that's in words. Good.
I didn't experience
Comments? Questions?
Comment, yeah. So when I went to college was when I first started getting
Talk loudly.
in college was when I first started getting consistent connections, but I didn't know how to protect myself yet.
Yeah.
I went to a college that's extremely haunted. There's all sorts of activity, and I had to learn quick.
Yeah, you did, because you're here, so you learned quickly. If you didn't learn, you probably wouldn't be
You know,
here.
John, some people, in the white light or the light, but prayer works for them too.
Absolutely.
They immediately
Absolutely.
say some prayer that they were raised with or that has a lot of power, and that's incredible.
Absolutely. There are as many universal ways to heal yourself and to protect yourself and to protect others and heal as there are thoughts. I mean, there are so many. So whatever does work for you,
Right.
and you'll learn what works for you. You already probably know, and you'll just start using it.
Right.
Yeah, good. Good point.
Joan had
Yeah.
a question.
Oh, yeah.
John, is there a way to filter out or identify spiritual spirits and high level spirits from just somebody walking around?
So, Joe.
You'll feel it in your solar plexus for sure. You can generally feel. Do you ever feel energies here?
Yes.
You'll feel their energy here. I think that's where I find it first before I see it or feel it anywhere else. That's where it hits me. I once asked the teachers when I was working in the light a lot, and I do work in the light a lot now, but at this point I was working in the light with people who didn't have legs and parts of their bodies and stuff. We were trying to get them to see that they were whole. We were working on that spiritual level.
They had crossed over.
They
through
crossed
injury.
over, yeah, and they were back and confused and swirling around and not really getting settled. And so I asked one of the teachers, I said, you come in and you're so bright. And sometimes you're not so bright. Some of the teachers come in and there's not that sort of glow. And I look behind me, which is look at a lower level of vibration, and it's dark there. And I look at the highest levels of vibration and it's dark there. How come it's so dark way up there like it's dark way back there? Teacher said, aha. He said, well, your ability to perceive only goes so far. So a teacher can be so high above you in energy that he will look dark. Well, there you go. That's interesting. Yes.
Quickly, you mentioned about seeing spirits that were not complete and missing body parts, etc. Our UCM is tied to the book of Levi, the Aquarian Gospel.
Yes.
And that author was a surgeon during the Civil War, and his experiences, I think, were a lot based upon that and trying to help people cross over
Absolutely.
into the light.
Yes. Sometimes when they cross over, they don't realize they're whole because we are whole. Our spirit is whole.
Mhm.
You don't lose a leg and lose a spirit leg. You still keep your spirit leg, but they don't believe that because they grew up believing in the body, like we do. Like I know, I can touch this. If I didn't have this hand to touch it, I'd probably be reaching for it, but it wouldn't be lifting, right? Unless I worked at it. So people, quite a few people over time have not believed that they're whole. And sometimes they have to touch you or feel your energy in order to realize that they're whole. And so that was one of the services we provided at that time. Many of them have gone on. The earth's pretty clean on that now, as far as I know.
Okay.
I have learned with people crossing over, known to me, that they sometimes go into some kind of a healing phase.
Yeah.
And a close friend recently, who a writing friend from the past, who died within the last month, and I did have a dream about him that I went. I journeyed by train because he lived very far away, and I found myself kind of in a World War I hospital situation with a man I couldn't see clearly, but it must have been him in a reclining chair, and I sort of passed around him, and then there was a Christ-like figure with long hair, and I had the sense that this was some kind of a healing hospital because he had neglected to get heart surgery in life. And it seemed like he had just had heart surgery on the other side. So he
Okay.
thought maybe
Sure.
they provided a healing medium for him. And then I was going to take a long train trip back, and I woke up and realized that was not on the other side of the country. That was on the other side of life.
Yes. Good point.
Do souls heal in healing temples or healing hospitals? I think so.
Many times people are so engrossed in their body and so in life that when they pass on, they carry that for a while with them. And so in order to heal them, you can't just give them a healing because they don't accept it. It doesn't become a part of them. So you have to show their body part being healed, and then they'll accept it.
Mhm.
Yeah, weird, but
In that tradition in numerous religions of praying for those that have passed over, and I think in Catholicism they had the parable about Jesus wandering in the desert for 40 days and 40 nights. Was one pastor tied that analogy to us praying for those people that are crossing over to help them get to the proper destination.
definitely,
Come to grips of missing body parts, etc., the traumas.
definitely. Yes, we are energetic fingers of God, as you know. We're all attached to the hand, but we're fingers. And as those, we can help each other by doing
I
that.
think Edgar Casey said the prayers of good people on earth right after someone died are a great help.
Oh yeah, they are. They can make a bridge to get the person where they really want to be.
Okay. I'm kind of here because I'm stuck with my whole life. Like I hear voices out of the blue, and they tell me who's gonna die, or they'll tell me get dressed and wait by the door. And I fight with them. I go, I don't want this. I'm not in the mood for this. I don't want this information. And I argue with them, and they won't go away. So finally, I just give in and I pray and I go, is it for good? Is it for good?
Good.
And they say, yes, it is.
Good.
But it's always very specific. I can hear their voices, and they'll say stuff like, I guess I used to blurt it out as a kid and scare all the grown-ups. So I need therapy about scaring everybody my whole life. But I know when I was 18, I got all these voices coming after me. And for days I kept saying, go away, I'm crazy. And they said, no, specifically, you need to do this, this, and this. And if this doesn't happen, you need to pack all your stuff and move. Even though you're very happy where you are. Because this is going to happen and you don't want to be there when it happens. So I did. And I didn't want to leave. And when I returned 6 months later, they said, oh, the day after you left, this thing happened. And it was so good you weren't there.
Right.
And so I've had that all my life, but it isn't something I've wanted. And I have no way of turning it off.
Guidance.
But it's always for good.
Yeah.
Even though it's bad news, I've saved my grandmother's life. I've saved people's lives because I go to their house right after they have a stroke. Or it'll be like, somebody's going to die, and I'm just telling you in advance so you're not too upset. But it's always for a good reason. But it's a pain in the butt. I don't want to develop.
It's a weight to carry. No, but you're doing a service. And
it's always for that.
And you've come here for that. That's
and
part
it doesn't make you friends either.
What you can set limits though. You can say to them, you can't just find me in the shower. You got to come to me when I'm sitting. And if you wanted to, you could spend every day 5 minutes or whatever time you want, early in the morning and late at night, or one or the other or both, and just say, if you have messages, please let me know. Don't just blurt in.
Office hours.
Give them
office minutes.
Valerie, what you need to do is say to a friend, I had a voice that told me.
Well,
but see, what you're doing, you're telling them like it's coming from you, and then they think you're crazy, even if it comes true.
I mostly don't tell. It's when I was a kid. My mom said I used to blurt it out as a little kid, say, oh, didn't Uncle Truman die? And all the grown-ups would call each other, go, he'll be dead in 2 weeks. The kid called it. And they weren't particularly happy to have me around. Especially because my mom grew up, I think, Irish Catholic, and she had it. Because she said, when I figured it out at 18, I was all freaking out and all shaking. This thing came true. She goes, you've been like that forever. And it's from the Irish side being fae. And it's one female per generation, and you got it. So live with it, kid.
As a child growing up, I had these experiences like you're talking about, and Welsh, Irish background. Half of my family are psychic, but they don't talk about it. So my father said, we talk about this in the house, but we don't talk about this outside the house, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And yes, you did. You saw Grandma. She was here, and she'd been dead for 8 years. You're right.
Yeah, I feel better now.
Yeah. So the environment helps to calm you down. Hopefully you have an environment where you can talk with people some of your friends about this. If not, we are a good
Yeah.
place.
If not, you need to make new friends.
I'm trying to make new friends. That's why I'm here.
Yeah.
I don't know people that you before this, that, I mean, I knew people, but I still don't want to tell them because I don't get good news, but it's always for good reasons. I always pray. It's always for good because
It's service.
because I'm actually able to help
That's
what's
wonderful.
going to happen, or they wouldn't give it to me.
Beautiful.
People are wishing they could have that. I know. I'll let them talk to you.
No, you don't want it.
Having prior knowledge and understanding can be a difficulty as well, but it's better to have it than not have it.
I mean, I've learned to live with it.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
But some people don't want to be your
But
friend.
you haven't if you still bothering you.
It does bother me.
Yeah.
That's why I'm a
So we're gonna have a group that's gonna get together of all people who it's bothering them
Oh, good idea.
and talk about
Good idea.
how you can do it. Yes, Ruth.
So if I were a single woman, I know for a fact that this would be my life. That is being Victoria. Is that what your name is? Valerie.
Sorry.
You got the first letter.
See, someday you'll be victorious and you'll be totally integrated with all this.
Well, Valerie means valor, bravery.
There you go.
There you go.
There you go. But I have a spouse who likes to call all this stuff that I'm into woo shit,
Mhm.
which I have thoroughly embraced. I thought it was hilarious and fabulous. But he doesn't mind me being here. He knows what I'm doing. He knows I'm in the ministerial program. He's like, okay, sure. As long as you're not hurting people. I'm like, fabulous. And I've had to be like, look, y'all, you need to give me this information in a way that he will accept.
That's
because
right.
he's going to lose his goddamn mind
That's
if I'm
right.
getting up at 4 a.m. to go on some driving trip or just randomly show up somewhere. And when I'm in the middle trying to make dinner, I can't just say, here, you take care of the noodles, hon, and vamoose. Not going to happen. I'm like, and so that's where I started setting up some of the parameters of how I can be of service in a way that works for my whole family.
We probably need some AA programs for this called spiritual energies or something, because there are people who would.
I'm Lynn. I'm a medium.
There you go. Exactly.
That kind of a
I
group.
don't know why
I was-
people would want this. Is what I'm saying. But I mean,
People
I'm
spend a lot
living
of
with
money
it,
to
and I know the good
get the
side of
training.
it. But
It's a form of service.
it is. I accept that.
So
Well,
that's
I
it.
mean,
That's why you do it.
No, I'm
It's
into
like a
that.
secret
It's
Well,
not, but
I think people want it because how many of them, I wish I had been there when
That's
we
right.
got there soon enough so that grandma or grandpa or whatever
Yes.
were able to
Yes.
at least say
Yes.
goodbye and things like that. So I think that's why people want it. They want the forewarning so that they could be more empowered.
Sometimes we have to help them take small steps into it.
Yeah.
My wife, who's a nice Italian girl, Roman Catholic, I was talking to her when I was dating her about spirit and seeing people and talking with them and all that, and she wasn't so sure she wanted to date me. She was kind of leery of this. So she said to her mother, this guy I'm dating, he talks to dead people. She said, yeah. She said, what? She said, yeah. My mother comes all the time and talks to me when I don't know what to do. She stands at the foot of my bed and explains it to me so I know what I'm supposed to do. What's wrong with that? My wife goes, I never knew my mother talked to dead people.
well, I have
That's
to
how
say
it
about
is.
that.
Yeah.
Because my deceased boyfriend, he died, in 2019. I kind of miss the guy, but the Italians and the Mexicans are down with this stuff.
Yeah.
It's still they don't miss a beat. It's just the culture that I grew up in, sort of, homogenized Americana.
Yeah.
They're not into it, but I'm surrounded by Mexican kids in the classroom, and Honduras and Cuba,
And they're aware of it. They're used
and
to
they're
it.
all like,
Day of the
I
Dead and
go,
all
are
that.
you cool with spirits? Like, yeah, okay, well, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
But Americans, no, not really.
And maybe,
They're
maybe
coming.
it's realizing that it's not just something that we know how to do, but it's really coming through us from the creative force, the all, and for a reason, for service. And it makes it maybe less scary. I remember when I first studied this.
Because I have Mexican friends where somebody pisses somebody off from the family, and they go back to Mexico and they get the bruja. I mean, they get the the witch, and she does her oogie boogie, and
Uh-huh.
they come back and stuff happens.
The Colendero.
That's part of the family.
Yeah.
That's
Sure.
and they don't tell the rest of us, but I'm in there. You know, they like me, so they'll tell me, yeah. But not here. It's just this culture that I grew up with.
We
Because
don't-
I'm Irish, and my mom was Irish, and she had all that.
Oh yeah.
But her mom was Catholic, and I think she didn't like it.
Yeah.
So she passed on
Well, the words we use aren't very good because our language, our lexicon isn't donated to, devoted to explaining this kind of thing. So we have to kind of work at it. And part of the time, well, part of the time I don't talk to somebody when they're having a hard time, but I do visualize myself in their aura, and they usually don't know how to keep me out. So I get to be there. And
Amanda, you
I'm
had
giving
your
them
hand up.
thoughts. Yes, go ahead.
Oh, yes. So, like, I remember when I think I was 4, and I lived in Campbell. This is when I met, no, it was a year after I met my spirit guide, Swim. Anyway, I remember I was 4 in 86. So we were in the car. It was me, my mom, my dad, and my sister. We were driving somewhere, and this voice came in my head, and it said baby suit. And then and the voice said, oh, it's going to be in the water, and it's going to, like, make sure you don't drown. So I remember I was on one of these floaty things because we lived in a house in Campbell, and it had a swimming pool.
Oh yeah, swimming pool. Okay.
So I was in the water on the floaty thing, and this animal, and I heard my sister, I don't know who she was talking to, but she said, no, I thought it was my sister, but I heard this voice say, no baby suit. And so I remember going into the water, and I don't know, I was about to drown or whatever, and then this thing, it was like an animal, and it came up to me, and it saved me.
Okay.
So I don't know. And then I told my mom about it, and she's like, baby suit? Who is baby suit? And I was just wondering if it was like a ghost or a spirit guide.
Uh-huh. Who was there to protect you, or try to protect you. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah. Well, that helps us to be aware that this is real, that it's the real thing when it happens to us personally like that.
Yeah.
Question there and then here. Go ahead.
I'm really glad. Oh my gosh, I forgot her name.
Amanda.
I knew that. Anyway, I'm glad she told that story because it just made me realize that I can't remember the fancy name for it, but clear feeling isn't on this list
That right here.
because I remember my
That's
mom.
clairsentient.
Is that? But I thought clairsentient was just clear knowing, where you just suddenly know something.
Quite often it's also feeling.
Is it?
Here
Okay.
in our text it says, oh, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
intuition and clairsentience.
Yeah.
Intuition is a word in extensive usage among modern metaphysicians. It may be defined as the capacity of the elevated human consciousness to move immediately and without discursive reasoning to the truth of something. The analytical conscious mind reasons logically, patiently to its conclusions. It gathers facts and reasons from them. The intuitive mind reasons swiftly, immediately, a priori to the essential truth of a problem or life situation. Clairsentience or clear knowing is practically the same function as intuition. Both involve a method of immediate inner knowing. Both rest upon the capacity of subjective mind to attune with cosmic mind, which is the reservoir of all knowledge, time, space, and being. Old-fashioned language, but still true for today.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. There was a question here, and then.
Yeah, I've had a lot of talks with newer friends about psychic things, mediumship, and I find that most of them are very curious, and over half of them have shared some sort of visitation dream, and they just want that comfort. Like, no way, that's a thing. I didn't want to get locked up in the loony bin. It's like, I don't know, that's very common. Often it was their mother or someone that was an elder who was a woman who had visited them in dreams. So I feel like people want to be in contact for comfort, but also
Mhm.
to be believed. People are so scared of not being believed that they don't even talk about those things. So it
Well said.
kind of helps
Yes.
to share something, even strangers. Like, well, I made this major life decision. My late grandfather visited me in a dream, pulled me out of my body 6 weeks after he'd passed, and shook me above
Yes.
the bed. Whoa!
That
So
can help people.
Right. Oh, well, mine's nothing quite like that. And they'll believe me. So
Yeah.
being comfortable to share it. Oh, well, now I can share all sorts of things.
Yeah, I'm thankful
stranger.
we're getting more comfortable, I think, as a culture in sharing this. And I think your point about the Spanish and the Italians, they've been sharing it a lot longer.
Oh, yeah.
And now we're kind of catching on a little bit and sharing it. I think we're getting better. Most people.
I think by second generation we lose kind of our background, and they kind of keep it. I don't know.
Right.
Stay true to their culture, and then we sort of get homogenized.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
because the Irish were doing it.
Oh, yeah. Irish and that gang have been doing it forever. So.
I'm a quarter Czechoslovakian, and I think my grandmother, my mother had some of that also. So it's interesting.
Comment? Yeah.
So I hear people talking about having too much awareness or too many messages. A lot of people that come into the spiritual studies are struggling to increase their ability to receive messages. And I know one thing we did one night was guess which cards were dealt to you. And anyway, there's different games that you can use to increase your intuitive ability. One of the gals that I play, Marie, you guys, a lot of you know Marie. I play Scrabble with her. She beats me by over 100 points because she can see different things that I don't see. And that's not just in Scrabble. She has an ability to see, and she's developed that through
Sure.
her games.
Sure.
So there's, you might want to talk about ways to increase your receptivity.
Yes. I've tried to decrease my receptivity on that level personally, because working with people with illness and thought disorders and spirit issues can get pretty confusing. So I try to slow that down. There was a time when I would be able to tell you all the cards you had in your hand. Because as a kid growing up, we played those games, and they wouldn't let me play because I would get them all right, which really was
like
irritating.
Edgar Casey had the same problem.
Yeah, right. So I stopped. I think I've stopped. I've really decreased it a lot. So I'm trying to just let the necessary healthy stuff come through, not the game stuff and foolishness, But it's a step in the right direction, See what works for you.
And also, I think that people who are just starting this, please always, I'm going back to the white light.
Yeah.
If you're actively saying, I want to work in this field,
Yes.
I want to do this, learn protection.
Yes.
It's so important because there's some lower vibrations that you have just opened up to. It's kind of like, yeah, here I am. Reminds me of Corky in Hawaii. And can you tell that story, Corky?
Well, we were in Oahu, and there was this huge amethyst that was like 5-6 feet tall.
Gee.
And it was at the opening of a gift shop. And we were sitting in the park, and I spied this, and it was like a geode, so it was open. And I said, let's go stand in front of it. And she goes, okay, you can. I'm not going to do it, but you go ahead. It's like, okay. And I ran over there, and I went, ah, and I went crawling back, and I felt so terrible. I feel like I'm going to throw up. I just get, and I had to lay down. I lay down on the bench for about 20 minutes because I was sick. I was terribly sick. I had exposed myself in the worst of ways.
Unfortunately, I was not going to correct her because that's one of those things you have to learn. Nobody can tell you that's going to happen until you have it happen.
In my visions, I've gone to other planets
Yes,
and seen
Well, that's what I
different
did.
civilizations.
yes,
And I'm just wondering if you've had any experiences with other planets
yes,
and space travel
yes,
or
yes.
any of that.
Yes to all the above, yeah. I have. I've had a lot of experience with that. I've been on the ships. I've been on the mothership, which is really long. It's like 400 miles long, I believe. It's up there. We can't see it because it doesn't reflect radar or anything. We don't know it's there. And they're just kind of keeping track of us. They're very benevolent, very loving people, and they just don't want us to, hurt ourselves too much. So they won't allow any weapons into space, and any ship that carries weapons will be kept from going into space. We can have battles on the Earth all we want to, but we can't send weapons into space. So they're just making sure. So if some of our shots don't make it, it's because probably there were weapons on it and we're not following the orders. They originally gave us that edict when President Eisenhower was in power, and he flew out to Vandenberg Air Force Base to meet with them. So it's been a long, long time. I forget which year it was, but a long, long time ago. And they explained to him and all the world leaders at that time on the same day. They met with all of them, different groups from outer space, and said, play your games, do what you want to do, no weapons in space. Anything else is go. And that's what they're sticking to. So we're protected from that, which is nice to know. So they're benevolent for the most part. There are some triangular ships. If you ever walk up a flying saucer and it's triangular, leave. Because they think we're edible. The triangular ships. Yeah. But the round ships, they look like a cup on top of a coffee, platter. They're safe. They don't eat us. So there are a few bad ones, and they're not allowed to come through here, and we are protected from them. They do keep a fence basically around us, so we don't get surprised by these bad guys. But sometimes they do get through and do something. So
who's doing the animal mutilation?
what's that?
Who's doing the animal mutilation?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't
And
know.
even we were there in Crestone, and it didn't feel negative. That you couldn't. And usually I could feel anything like we saw. Another quick Dottie story. We were there. We were outside the huge sand dune, and they had sighted saucers, or they'd sighted ships, or they'd sighted something there. And so it was at night, and we're sitting there, and Corky says, "I want to see some flying saucers." And I said, "Oh, okay." And I talked, and all of a sudden these things came out, woo, 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 out of the great sand dune. And I said, "Now look up." And we looked up, and here came two big Air Force fighter pilots.
Oh yeah.
We chased them away. And Corky said, "Okay, that's enough." It's like,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well, now that you said that, I'll tell you a cute little story. I think it's kind of cute. I was meeting with them weekly for a long time. For a number of years, we met every Wednesday night, and they would talk to us about upcoming events and space shots that were coming up and stuff like that. And they were always right. They'd always tell us which shots would go and which ones wouldn't, and why they wouldn't, and all that stuff. And during one of those, they stopped and they said, "Something you will find interesting. We are going to play." And we're a group of us, about 18 of us or so, were sitting there. I said, "Play? What kind of game?" "Well, you will find out. Wednesday night at midnight, if you're near Mountain View, California," which we were because we were in San Jose, "you may want to come out and park and watch." So I lived in Mountain View, and I had a view of Moffett Field. So I was in a perfect spot. I went and sat in the backyard and waited. Midnight, 3 ships quietly came across, very quietly. You wouldn't even know they were there if you didn't look up and see them. Have their little emblems on the bottom and all that. They went over to Moffett, and all of a sudden, wow, you could see the lights come on at Moffett, and hear the planes revving up. And they went this way, this way, this way, this way, and then they went away. They were playing.
I want to give a little background for him because he was actually studying with Reverend Pearl Wilkinson, one of the earliest UCM ministers, and they had part of the process were many psychical and spiritual explorations.
Oh, sure.
And it was in the context of that you had those experiences. Because when groups come together and they come for good intent, great knowledge is enhanced.
Yep.
In
Yep.
fact, we're going to read, you have a handout of principles, and these principles are very similar to the principles stated in our text.
Lynn, before you do that, which I'm looking forward to, Jody, what do you mean you were there and you didn't seem bad or something?
When we went through the valley, and this is a valley where they had seen a lot of mutilation of animals, and when I was going through, it didn't come across that it was negativity coming from outside.
No.
It came that there were some local farmers doing something. It came that it was whatever it was. It could have been these animals had some kind of disease and they couldn't sell them at the market. It was like there was a reason they were mutilated, but they didn't want to get found out. And that's what I felt. It was definitely humanoid doing it. It wasn't from outer space.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that, but I don't think it'd come outer space. The ones I've worked with would never do something like that.
Right.
Can
Yeah.
I ask you about an experience I had?
Yes,
Because I've never seen a flying saucer.
talk loudly.
Oh, I've never seen a flying saucer, but I was with my sister-in-law, and we were in Santa Clara, and the whole front of the house was frosted glass, so you couldn't see through it.
Okay.
It was kind of Eichler's or something.
Yeah.
And it was afternoon, and all of a sudden, this solid beam of light came right through the glass and went right through the living room.
Hmm.
And it was quiet, and it was tubular.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, we just looked at each other and we go, what the heck was that? And I go, maybe it was a motorcycle light, but it's daytime. So we ran outside, there was nothing outside. And then we turned on the radio and there was all these sightings all over Santa Clara saying a UFO,
Huh.
and it'll be on the 4:30 news, but it wasn't on the
No,
news.
they don't put that on the news.
Yeah,
If they can help
and
it.
so I didn't know, she brought it up like 10 years later. We saw that,
Yes.
it was an unidentified flying object, but
Oh.
I don't know if it was a laser.
I don't have any
but it
idea.
was
I don't know.
quiet.
Because if it came through frosted glass, it would have normally spread out. It wouldn't
It
have
didn't
stayed
spread. It was
tight.
like a tube,
I'll be darned.
and it went right
I don't know.
past us. So I don't know.
Well, if I ever talk to him again, which I don't hardly ever anymore because no need to, but I'll try to remember to ask him that question.
And
Because I asked a lot of questions.
One other thing, John, when you're talking about this activity that's going on, there's a group, and I don't know what they're called, but I would say cosmic cops,
Mm-hmm.
who are definitely watching what goes on
Oh, yeah.
outside.
They're
of our-
protecting us.
Yeah.
One thing along that line that you just reminded me of that I think is kind of interesting, they when we would meet with them, they would say, if you have, every so often, they wouldn't do it every time, but every so often we were meeting with them, they'd say, if you have any questions, we'll be glad to tell you what we know. And so I, being silly and young, I was pretty young at the time, because when I went to Reverend Pearl, I was 14 and a half, and I was, so I was about 17, 19, somewhere. I said, oh yeah, what about Christ? Is he real? And they said, the being to whom you're, he talked like these movie people, the being to whom you're referring, you're very uptight. Yes, he did come to your planet and do many of the things which are documented. Not all of them, but many of the things that are documented. And he came to every planet that had life on it at exactly the same time and stayed the same length of time at each one. He went to all the planets at exactly the same time. I would have asked more questions if I wasn't awestruck. I said, oh, thank you. So he did appear on all the planets at exactly the same time, carrying the same message.
Does that mean he was an alien?
I don't know what it means. I think
Maybe
Are we
interdimensional.
aliens?
I think it means he's gone,
We're aliens,
or
too.
he's
It's the
connected.
universal energy. It's a kind of,
I don't know what it means. It's just beyond. It's a little beyond me. But that was their answer. He came to all of the planets with life at the same time, and stayed the same time, same period, and left,
Great.
carrying the same message, I guess.
That's wonderful.
Interestingly, all of us really in the room, we're all spiritualists. And I've been studying a little bit more as a historian of this church, and I ran into an early spiritualist hymn book which says in a very nice way some of the principles that sort of protect us, shield us, in which we have commonality. And you have that handout. We believe in infinite intelligence. We believe that the phenomena of nature, both physical and spiritual, are the expressions of infinite intelligence. We affirm that a correct understanding of such expression and living in accordance therewith constitute true religion. We affirm that the existence and personal identity of the individual continues after the change called death. We affirm that communication with the so-called dead is a fact, scientifically proven by the phenomena of spiritualism. We believe that the highest morality is contained in the Golden Rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. We affirm the moral responsibility of individuals and that we make our own happiness or unhappiness as we obey or disobey nature's physical and spiritual laws. We affirm that the doorway of reformation is never closed against any soul here or in the or hereafter. We affirm that the precepts of prophecy and healing are divine attributes proven through mediumship. That seemed to apply to us tonight. So I shared that, and everybody has a handout about that.
That's right.
Thank you. That's great, Lynn. Thank you so much.
And not only that, the exciting thing about this book is it was really not, it was written, we began in 1908, and it was written certainly before the last mid-century, but it really points to now, the Aquarian Age. It's really all about that. And I found,
The Aquarian, what book do you have?
this is our text of
Well,
spiritual
that was
philosophy.
written in 1950s.
That's what I said, mid-century. It was written,
okay.
but it had its inception in our leadership that came from 1908 or so. And there was this great awakening in the 1830s in the United States, in upstate New York, of spiritualism.
Right.
But a lot of other American religions got their start then, Latter-day Saints and many. And it's just interesting to know how we fit in history. There was kind of an awakening period. But I found in the book, in this book, our text, prophecies for what we'll be experiencing right now. And they said that people began to know themselves as spiritual beings. These were wonderful intuitions of the kingdom of God, of the heavenly realm within us, which Jesus had spoken of so long ago. God was understood in the heart as a loving deity, a father-mother God. That's a lot to say decades ago. A spiritual principle of absolute love, mind, and life. People walked with the Creator in spirit and were free to tell one another of the marvelous lessons they learned from the fount of this guidance. So I find this relevant today and relevant to our conversation.
That was written in 1908.
Well, that was
No,
or-
1950.
it was written in the 50s,
50s, okay.
but it was influenced by spiritual work done by both
Okay.
Daddy Briggs. His picture is up there,
Okay.
starting in 1908.
Mm-hmm.
And his successor, Dr. Fitzgerald, who had a metaphysical library
I knew him.
in Oakland. Now, John kind of knows, has even earlier stories. We were kidding that between us we have over 108 years
Yes.
of experience in the UCM.
I was ordained in 1964, so, and you were ordained in...
I became a licentiate in 82, which is much
Okay.
later, but you add it all together, it's quite
Add it all up, we're pretty old.
Yeah.
What is the licentiate?
Licentiate is the first, like if you're going to
They're
become...
changing that.
Well-
Since so many people had no idea what licentiate was.
Guess what I found out? All the spiritual churches in the United States use that term currently, and it was a term meaning it's your first year, and you become a minister who couldn't. If you're a minister, you can't do a wedding or funeral.
You can do funerals.
You can do funerals, but not the wedding, and or you healer practitioner. It's a term that's been used in our book and is currently used by the National Spiritualist.
And one of the
America.
things that we're discussing for UCM is you're right here. You're the group that's right here where they're bringing it more into the New Age. And so you're going to be finding that things that John and Lynn are saying might be things that they're slowly being changed. You're right on the cusp because some of the, there's going to be new writings that are coming in, changing some of the format, but the term is going to be a spiritual minister or a healing minister. So you have two types of ministry you can go into. Like Kathleen is a healing minister. She has done a lot of work with bodies and that type of thing, and so that's where her ministry is a more in healing with her massage and all of that. and then other people are going to be, so you're going to have a choice, and that's what we're going to be talking to later. There's some changes that are coming up, mainly because nowadays they are getting rid of books. They are getting rid of things because everything you can just about find on the computer with the program.
I think personally we need our roots and new flowering, but that books are wonderful friends. And as Reverend Joseph said, they're kind of pillars, some of the old books.
Will you be doing both? Because I can't see separating them.
Doing what?
Healing and other ministries.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
the
good.
healing and the spiritual. They're coming up. You just decide which you want to focus a little more on.
But you will end up doing both.
When you become ordained, you'll be
Yeah.
doing both. Yeah,
Good.
yeah.
Thank you.
As an ordained reverend, you can come up from either way.
Right.
It's just what do you want to focus on.
Okay. Good.
Did you
Thank
want to tell us more about your experiences and knowledge of everybody's hungry to hear?
Yes,
So,
if anybody has any questions, I'll answer them as best I can. I mean, I could talk. I could bore you all to death. I mean, you finally you'd say, "Why is he still talking?"
Now, boring is not any time or any place
Well,
where
wait,
that would be
give
an
me time.
adjective describing you any time. I'm older than you.
Maybe,
Yeah.
or maybe not. You want to say?
I was born 38.
You're older than me. I'm 42.
Okay.
I was slow.
So,
I
buddy,
came in as fast as I.
Older, I'm older.
Oh no! Here we go. I'll show you mine if you show me yours.
I got into this as a teenager. I was the youngest person around. I'm so glad
No,
now.
as the oldest,
Okay.
having been born in 1935,
Okay, we respect you for that very much.
I will tell you that I started in these studies in the early 70s, and it was still a time when you had to be really careful who you talked to and
Yeah.
what you said. Now, there's still some of that, but there's
Right.
a much broader audience and receptivity about the spiritual studies now than there was
Yes.
then. It has gradually flowered.
Yes.
And it's done that by telling our stories.
Uh-huh.
And so that's why I'm working with people to do speeches, to learn how to tell their story. How did you come into this and what keeps you here?
Are you writing your story?
Yeah, but she's also training speakers.
Good,
So
good.
she has a class where she's going to be teaching people how to speak, because as a minister, and as whether you're ordained or wherever, you're going to find yourself called upon to give up and give a speech.
Oh yeah.
And Joan is really good at teaching people how to talk.
I can't emphasize that enough. I mean, that's really true. You've got to be comfortable to stand up and look them all in the eye and start talking, and it'll come.
It's so important to share your stories and your beliefs.
I agree.
That's how the movement as a whole moves forward.
Bless you.
And there's a movie, Kardec, Kardec, that's on Netflix still, I think, and it talks about how this accountant gathered information from different spiritualist groups in the mid-1800s and correlated them and found out that no matter where they were meeting, they were getting the same information.
Isn't that? Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree.
And his book
Amen to that.
was
thank you.
burned in
Yes.
Spain,
Oh, that's true.
which of course exploded the interest in the whole thing. But by putting it out there in a book, by telling the story,
You're right.
then it became more acceptable as more people
You're
knew
right.
about it.
You're
And
right.
that's part of our mission, is to tell our story and expand the number of people that know
Yes.
about this.
Close to 50% of our sensory input in the whole body comes through the eyes to the brain. So that they got to read it to understand it. Yes.
So back to what Dottie and Lynn were saying, my understanding is with this whole cusp and updating of language, it's really we're keeping the roots but updating the language. So like as I've seen brotherhood all over the place or mankind all over the place, it's humankind and siblinghood and
Okay.
mother, father, parent, God. So it's like the same
Inclusive language.
But yeah,
It was
we're just
certainly
updating
part
it
of
to
my
make it more
graduate
inclusive
work.
and more
Yeah.
understood.
Yeah.
but really our roots were still.
But we
there.
have some here, and it's
Yeah.
surprising to me and wonderful to find.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's exactly like if any of you have gone on a computer and looked up the Bible
Mm-hmm.
with just one passage, and it'll take it from the Aramaic. No, it's not
Aramaic.
Aramaic, right?
Thank you.
Aramaic.
Aramaic. Thank you very much, Lord.
Aromatic.
And it shows
Aromatic.
8 different updating or translating or whatever, and it's amazing. But it still holds the same essence, but the language has changed.
What's nice if you have old-fashioned text and you have it and it stood the test of time, but then you can put parallel to it, new interpretations.
Right.
Not destroy it or change it, but rather make a parallel response, a new response. It seems like to keep the roots and still flower. So John, what else would you like to know about John's experiences and wisdom? It has so much to share.
Please go on.
Okay. Yes.
What was one of your first psychic experiences or perceiving spirit?
When did I first have these experiences?
Yeah.
When were you conscious of it, or also just when you first experienced it, even not understanding?
Very early, like really early in my life. I mean, I could talk about in utero stuff, but I walked when I was 7 months because I heard my grandfather out there and went out, and from that time on, I never stopped moving. But so I came in with this to work with it, and that's what I'm doing.
What I've impressed with you, John, is just how you transform difficult circumstances in your life.
Oh,
You know, experience with your brother, experience with your work. Somehow you were able to, like we talked about last week,
yeah.
transform obstacles into opportunities just in some innate way.
We're not actually here to talk about me.
I think you're fascinating to
Well,
hear
thank you. I
about.
appreciate that. Each of you is fascinating. I feel like I'm in a room full of diamonds. You're so glowing. You're just so, I love it. I'll lose my speech if I get too much into this, because I get kind of out of my body here. But yeah, no, this knowledge helps you to do that. You can see the other person's energies, and you can see where they're going, what they want, and so I worked with people who were impossible to work with, and maybe because of their damage, their central nervous system or whatever, but you can always reach something. And when you do, it glows, you know that. And so we do that with friends and acquaintances all the time. So you know what I'm talking about. So that's part of the joy of life that I have. Part that makes me excited and happy. But yeah.
I work with kids with special needs, and I
What's
feel
that?
the same way. I work with kids with
Yeah,
special needs.
I can see it. Yeah,
but
you're
also the parents. Sometimes it's like there's something the parent doesn't want to say, or they think they're going to tell me something I haven't heard before. It's kind of that. Sometimes I'll get we'll start down this track, and then every time sometimes like, oh, I thought you never would have known what to even do with this. And you're the third one to tell me that. It's not common, but yeah, I've worked with that before.
Yeah. Well, often what you'll do is you'll hit the point. You'll say the thing that lights them up, and then it can go dark again. Don't worry, it's there. It's working. Give it some time. They have to kind of come to it.
I have a special
and keep
needs
poking
daughter, and I wrote an article about that for the Casey magazine about what she's taught me. Because
Yes.
I learned that brains, I think, are kind of tuning mechanisms. It's the soul, which is almost always present, and sometimes present in surprising ways with people who have special needs, or probably the mentally ill that you worked with.
Both, and the developmental disabled. I worked a lot with DD folks too. And I would come home and say to my wife, and she got bored hearing this, I'd say, I wish we lived like they did. I wish we thought like they did. Because there's so much more in there. And it's not interfered with by life as much. They have more,
And kids will be connected in. I work with this 7, 8-year-old, and we were together a couple weeks at the schools, and goes, it's weird to be in a body. Okay. He's like, no, I wanted to be a baby. Now I'm big, and this is weird.
Oh.
Go off.
Oh, yeah.
Old soul.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Oh, gosh,
like,
yes. Oh, gosh,
yep.
yes.
And it's so interesting. 'Cause he's so young. It's like there's those connections. It's like,
Totally,
that's the
totally.
soul contract thing. wow, yeah, to be able to connect in with those kiddos and just build that relationship.
That's it.
They're like, they feel comfy with you, which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
Keep doing what you're doing. Each one of us is touching people that way. We don't always see it as clearly, but we are all part of God. You know, I see us as fingers on God's hand, you know, and we're out here doing our work. And we come back to, we meet each other back here sometimes like we're doing now, but most of the time we're out here working. And that's okay. It's kind of a good thing. Keeps us kind of flexible.
Lynn mentioned something about your brother. Do you care to talk about that?
The closet.
What's that?
The closet experience that you wrote
Oh.
about in our class.
Lynn is impressed by, by the fact that even as a child, I wasn't particularly thrown off by crazy behavior. And my brother sometimes had to babysit me because we came from no money. The first time I actually saw real money, I was 9 years old, you know, because we lived on a farm and we grew stuff, and my parents went in twice a year and bought, you know, sugar and coffee and those kinds of things in big sacks and stuff. But I never really saw that going on until we moved into the city. But my brother, sometimes he was 8 years older than me, and he had to babysit me. And so Lynn is my teacher, and I'm writing articles. And so one article I wrote was how when my brother had to babysit me, he would make me go in the closet and close the door. And if the door came open at all, he would call the police and have me taken away, and I would never see mommy or daddy again once they took me away. He could never come back, you know. So I'd push the door open. He'd go to the telephone. I'd close the door. You know, wait for a while, try again. So all he had to do was head for the phone. And Lynn thought that was terrible child abuse. But you know, I didn't mind being in the closet. I didn't like it. I mean, I wanted to go out and play. It would be a lot more fun. But I had things to think about. So, you know, but I tested the waters a number of times, and he was pretty consistent. So I stuck to it.
You made it. You realized you'd get out eventually, and you could use it as a quiet time, and somehow took an experience that could be a form of child deprivation.
Could be.
Able to work with it somehow.
Turn it around, make it into something kind of silly and fun. It wasn't so much fun, honestly, but, you know, I could put up with it.
And then the experience when you wanted to be one of the first male nurses.
Oh, gosh, that's a whole presentation. We could spend a lot of time on that. But I'm a registered nurse, and I went into nursing in the late 60s. I was pre-med, interviewed doctors, found them to be very boring. Decided maybe that wasn't the best life for me. Interviewed 6 doctors. All 6 said, don't do it. It's a nightmare. You get a lot of appreciation, a lot of honor, but it's a nightmare life. The day you need to be with your wife or your mother or your child or whatever is the day your patients are going to get the sickest. You can't go see them. You'll have to spend your time at the hospital instead of taking care of your child or whatever. And it's a continuous, never-ending nightmare. And I didn't find one doctor who argued that, actually. All 6 of them pretty much told me the same script. Don't do it. It's nuts. Find something else. Do something else with your life. And 2 of them said I'd become a nurse if I could. Nursing? I thought women were nurses, right? I mean, how many men are nurses right at that time? So I looked into it and found out that it's possible to become a nurse. Of course, the nursing department told me it's not possible. The director of nursing said, I will never allow a man to graduate from my program, ever. So don't even try.
Was it a Catholic nun?
Huh? San Jose State?
Was it a Catholic nun?
No, Ray Staples. No, she was the head of the department. But she said no. She made me weigh in because she said, you're too fat. Well, she was bigger than I was. Anyway, she made me weigh in. And there's a whole long story that goes with that.
And a lot more.
But the best thing to know about that whole thing is if you wave a red flag in front of me, I'm like any other bull, I'll go for it, right? And she said, you can never graduate from our program. I will make sure of that. So I said to myself, oh boy, now I have to do it, you know. What are you going to
But
do?
you transformed it, and then you became a leader in mental health in the Valley, and,
All that.
and were able to overcome that reverse sexism.
Yeah, there's a lot of stories about overcoming reverse sexism, but it was really powerful. Just a second, then I'll take it. One of the weirdest parts of it was there was one nurse there. I don't think she'd ever been married. My wife was in nursing too. I didn't know she wasn't my wife then, but you know, later. Anyway, we're both sitting in class, and this nurse liked to sit up on the opposite
Oh,
from me,
no. I'll never
and she
forget
wore
that.
no underwear at all, and she liked to,
On
as soon
purpose.
as I was looking at her, she'd go,
And you said, I'm happily married. Just let it. You used your
Thank
spiritual
you.
principles. Oh my
I have
God.
some things to look at here. So there was that kind of stuff that went on in real life, that's how it goes.
Somehow you grapple with real life events through your spiritual perspective.
Which
It
you would
seems
do
like-
too now, because you have the spiritual understanding too. So you don't have to get pulled down by the darkness of it. You can actually walk across the light parts, and they get frustrated. They get really frustrated with you when you can walk across the light parts, because they're just hoping they can pull you down, but they can't.
Who's they?
Exactly.
Anybody.
All those bad people. Whoever's trying to interfere with what you're trying to do.
Oh, you mean actual humans or
No, I'm talking about actual humans, but there's probably entities too. But no, the actual humans are just, they're
Your
more,
brother with the closet, the person who didn't want a male
right,
nurse,
all that stuff.
but still pursuing your purpose
Mhm.
and keeping your centeredness somehow. It was pretty
Yeah.
remarkable. It seemed like our
Some-
class was impressed.
I think all of your lives and my lives too, quite often there are times I'm like an icebreaker, we're just keep pushing, because we're going to get through it. And we do,
Makes sense.
actually, interestingly enough, we do get through it.
Do you have any advice? I have a dear friend who's going through grief right now, and she is having all these strong emotional reactions, and they are justified things. She's feeling very unbalanced. Do you have any?
No, I mean,
advice or
just the
tips for
basic ones.
grounding?
The basic ones of, keep your mind and body clean, take some deep breaths, know what your focus is, stick to your focus. Know that things will get in the way, but they won't stop you. They'll just get in the way, and you'll keep on pushing till they move. And you don't have to be aggressive, you just have to keep pushing. You'll get there. Sooner or later, you'll get there. That's about all I can say.
Two things. One, in response to, I forgot your name already.
Lauren.
I took a class on grief, and my teacher, Shauna Jans, said the most amazing thing ever. You don't need to heal from your grief. You need your grief to heal.
Good point.
Wait, who said
Good
that?
point.
Shauna Jans,
How do I
Yes.
spell the last name?
Janz. But my question for you, John,
Yes.
was, you just described you, red flag, you're a bull, you're going to go for it. How does that level of stubbornness and grr, I'm going to do the thing, help you with your spiritual life and with your mediumship and all of your clair skills and stuff?
Sure. I don't think of it as stubbornness personally, although you might see it that way. I think of it as tenacity. If I have a goal, I will keep working toward it. I may get diverted sometimes. Like I had to get all of the heads of the departments, I was already done my pre-med, I'd finished it. I had to go back to all the heads of the departments and get them to sign off to allow me to go back and take those classes, because they were below the level of class I'd already finished. But they were required by the curriculum, so I had to go back and do it. So I had to add another year and a half or almost 2 years, I think, to my work. But it's tenacity. It's if you have a goal, if I decide on a goal, and she helped me decide on that goal, the director, I will stick to it and work at it and work at it and work at it and work at it until it's done.
But that's part of your spirituality, is that ability to believe in yourself. I think the greatest part of spirituality is knowing you, and knowing that when you put your mind on a focus, that's what's going to happen.
That's the part.
And,
When you focus your spirit on something, it
yeah.
will come to you, or you will go to it.
Right.
It will
Right.
happen.
Maybe believing in your destiny.
It
Right.
will always happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that belief has to come from you. And you can't, you can take all the classes you want and everything about how I can be better, but until you believe you're better, you're not going to get there. And that's that spiritual part of
Good
all
point.
of us.
Good point.
We all have that ability to spiritually connect and know that we are a bright star
Mm-hmm.
and shine.
Yes. Yes. Good.
So we have a Zoomer that has a question.
Yes.
Teresa says, I too have the resilience, but not sure I do with as much grace as you. No, wait a minute. There's a question before that.
I'm not so
In my
graceful.
work, I get a strong sense of knowing, but I have not been able to hear any voices. I feel I have other signs. I haven't. Can you learn this, or just something you have or don't have?
What is this person trying to learn?
So that was. Teresa, what was it you were referring to? What learn to hear voices. Okay, so in my work I get a strong sense of knowing, but I have not been able to hear any voices. I feel I have other signs, I guess other ways of communicating.
Next week is getting in touch with your spirit guide.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
Can you learn this, or just something that you have or you don't have? To hear the voices.
It's very individual.
Yeah.
Everyone is unique. Wouldn't you say, John?
Yeah, I don't think I'm born with it, honestly. I think it comes to me. I think for us, I may be wrong. There might be something in there, but it seems to me that if there's something you want to do in life, like maybe you want to hear, maybe you want to be guided by a spirit guide, then you pray for that. Literally, you pray for that. You ask.
Yeah, you have to open up to it.
Yeah, could I have that? Would you mind
And
sending
you
it?
have to be ready for it when it comes.
And that's the other thing.
Yeah, but it's like if you're learn languages easily.
Yeah.
Do you know that you do that, or does it just happen?
Right.
You may be hearing voices and don't know it.
Exactly.
You may think you're talking to yourself, and you're really somebody else talking to you.
Yeah.
Then you need to get a guide or whoever's helping you, ask them to speak in a.
What my guide is saying to me right now is have her sit down with a pencil and paper and just write down whatever comes into her head. And over time, that'll transform into words.
Mm-hmm.
Just let her write. Just write whatever's there, whatever comes through. Do it. Don't do it all the time. Do it maybe 5 minutes a day, or not enough to exhaust you, because it is tiring to do this when you're first connecting.
Mm-hmm.
But just sit down for 5 minutes, maybe in the morning or the afternoon, and just let yourself write whatever.
Automatic writing.
Automatic writing.
Yeah.
Or spirit writing.
Or spirit writing. And if even if nothing comes through, that'll help to open up what she wants to open up.
Okay, she says, okay, I will try harder. Laugh out
Don't
loud.
try harder. Try
Okay.
more consistently.
More consistently.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just let it flow.
Teresa?
Mediumship exhibits extraordinary variety. In fact, it is a very individual matter, and no two sensitives function in exactly the same way. The more developed the sensitive, the more original and unique his or her work is sure to be. So it's
Okay.
all
So she
different.
says, great, I will try this. Thank you very much.
You're
Thanks for your advice.
Yeah, very welcome. Good luck. I think you can. I don't think you can. I know you can.
You know you can, so you have to do it, Teresa.
Come for you.
That didn't come from me, by the way. That came from my spirit guide. I didn't know what to say.
But I think one of the things that is unique is the people that have to live with mediums. It's just the things that everyone's something, the things that I do, and Kirky just looks at me and shakes her head like,
Mhm.
how did you know that? And well, for me, my spirit guide said, well, Ma told me, But and I'm sure your wife has that. To
My
put up
wife
with.
of 51 years
Yeah.
sometimes just shakes her head and says, okay. We got to go this way and do this. Okay.
Can I share a story?
Yeah.
I used to manage apartments a long time ago down south in a little town called Lancaster. And one cold winter morning, I just jumped out of bed, grabbed my robe, and dashed out the door. And, of course, my husband woke up to work, and I was told, in a dream, go
Okay.
stop Leroy.
Okay.
And I went running across the lawn, and here was Leroy marching towards his house with a rifle in his hand. And I said, Leroy, give me that gun. Grabbed his gun, walked back, left him with his mouth open, walked back, opened the door, climbed, put the rifle in the corner and climbed back in bed. My husband
Valerie's
said,
experience.
what did you just do? And I said, well, Leroy was going to kill his wife.
Mm-hmm. You're not allowed to do that.
He's not allowed to do that. And my husband just looked at me. What?
Is this a dream?
No, but those things happen
Sure.
when you're
It can
working
happen.
with the other side. That there's something so
Absolutely.
horrendous going to happen
Absolutely.
that you're going to put yourself in
Absolutely.
that place to do something about
And he never tried again, did he?
it. He moved.
Yes.
So that sort of makes me wonder, what would you? Oh, so sorry.
Okay.
That was me. Oh my
I got
gosh,
it.
I'm
You're
so
not
embarrassed. What would you John, say to people who be like, well, nothing like that happened for my mom or someone that I knew, you know, like that person you talked about earlier, where the sister got to see her deceased sister got to see her sister through your eyes. Like, she didn't get her life saved. So what would you say to
I would
people who
remind
question?
them that we're not responsible for other people and what they're doing. That's their life skill. That's their life story. That's what they're here to experience. We are here to assist. And sometimes we're told to do something and we do it because we're assisting. But unless we're told to assist, it's not really our responsibility to step in.
Thank you.
People have the right to do what they got to do.
How is our time?
Oh, yeah.
You're bumping right up against it.
Okay, there's
What
one.
do you
I
wanna
would like to
say?
read one story that I think is great.
You wrote.
That I wrote. Not because I wrote it either.
Okay, say it loud and proud.
We have enough time? It's
Yes.
4 pages.
Absolutely, do it.
I won't take forever.
I wouldn't prevent you from doing it at all. Please do it.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I'll go fast. And I'll stop talking about other things. But this is a story that I found in the newspaper. Then I have the newspaper clipping. And I thought it was the most amazing story because we forget about the Bible and we forget about God and we get busy talking about all this other stuff. Is there a missing day in the universe is the question. Well, the answer is absolutely. And the missing day is well documented in the Bible. Now, without computers, we would have never known this. Only computers opened this door for us. I've always enjoyed investigating unusual circumstances and events. This one is especially appealing to me. In the early 1970s, some engineers and mathematician friends of mine decided Christianity may be good for them. In the past, they had at worst rejected any part of religion and at best ignored all religions. For them, God was a ridiculous concept and the Bible was written by blithering, fearful idiots. That's how some of my friends felt, too. For these men and women, religion is the true antithesis of science, so they think religion is unfounded, in fact, and should not be given any credence at all. They think that religion is the same genre as black magic, witches, and possibly even psychosis. In their perception, the Bible is a conglomeration of myths, imagination, half-baked stories passed down through generations of uneducated nomads. Many of my friends were scientists. I grew up in the tiny town of Mountain View, California, after we had moved there in 1957. Mountain View is located very close to Lockheed, Moffett Field, and Ames Research. I was very science-minded and made many boyhood family friends who were also interested in finding the truth, in quotes, through science. Some of these friends were children of well-known rocket scientists brought from Germany after World War II, including Werner von Braun family. My good friend Gunther Werner was the son of one of these scientists. He taught me German, and I helped him improve his English. Ich nicht sprechen Deutsch, unfortunately. In May of 1970, newspapers reported an enlightening series of historical events that caused renewed and serious interest in Christianity on the part of space and computer scientists. Some of my quotes in this article come directly from May 13, 1970, Scotts Valley News article entitled The Missing Day. That was the newspaper. In April 1970, our budding space program, located in the Greenbelt of Maryland Research Facility, back east, and the process of using the most advanced computers available to protect the exact location and space of our satellites and equipment. Everything in space has to be exactly located. Otherwise, they needed to know the exact coordinates of every item in the orbit for the full duration of its life in space. They felt it was necessary to mathematically predict these orbits many thousands of years into the future in order to ensure that the safety of the equipment and prevent any chance of unexpected collisions or untimely or unexpected orbital decay. Some of this equipment sent into space would most likely have thousands of years of orbital life. New satellites, manned or unmanned, needed to avoid and needed unpredicted collisions. In the process of planning the space shot orbits and laying orbital positions in space extending hundreds, even thousands of years from now, they ran into a computer glitch. In the process of running the computer measurements of possible orbits of satellites over the centuries, their best computers measured orbital positions out only a few hundred years into the future and then unceremoniously shut down with flashing red light indicating that there was either incorrect data fed into the computer, or the results of the computations did not agree with well-proven standards. In short, it did not compute. It could only go out a few hundred years, and then it did not compute. The service department was called in to correct the offending and malfunctioning parts on the computer. According to Mr. Harold Hill, space program consultant and director of the Curtiss Engine Company in Baltimore, Maryland, the computer was functioning fine. The IBM head of operations was called in. The team studied the data and results and found the only rational explanation in their report, and it was stated, "We have found there is a day missing in space in elapsed time." If this was the only answer possible, then their best scientific minds felt they could find no tenable rational answer. That was the only rational answer. There's a day missing. The best scientific minds in America were called in, and during the long few days of their hair pulling and head scratching and hand wringing, they confronted the impossible notion that there really was, at some point in history, a total loss of one day. There's no other answer. The computer wouldn't back down. One member of this august body of research scientists, mathematicians, and computer geniuses had attended Sunday school as a youngster. After days of trying every scientific avenue to solve this impossible conundrum, one of the scientists, we'll refer to him as Bob, said, "You know, one time I was in Sunday school, and they talked about the sun actually standing still." After a long silence laden with disbelief and withering stares, the team leader, faced with absolutely no other sliver of hope, answered, "Bob, you need to show us." Bob found a Bible and paged back into the book of Joshua, where he found a pretty ridiculous statement for anybody who has common sense. There they found the Lord saying to Joshua, "Fear not, I've delivered unto them thy hand. They shall not a man among them stand before thee." Joshua was concerned because he was surrounded by the enemy, and if darkness fell, they, the enemy, would overpower his army. So Joshua asked the Lord to make the sun stand still. And in the Bible it says, "And the moon stayed, hastened not to go down about a whole day." The space scientist said, "There's the missing day." Well, they checked the computers, going back to the time this was written, and found it was close, but not close enough. The elapsed time that was missing back in Joshua's time was 23 hours and 20 minutes. That's not a whole day. They reread the Bible passages, and it said about, or approximately, a whole day. These little words in the Bible were very helpful. They were important, but the scientists were still in trouble because you can't account for 40 minutes. You'll be in trouble with your orbit 10,000 years from now. The 40 minutes had to be found because it multiplies many times over in orbits. Well, this religious scientist recalled that somewhere in the Bible it said the sun moved backwards. Cuckoo. The other scientists thought Bob may be out of his mind, but they got the Bible out again and found in 2 Kings 20, Hezekiah, on his deathbed, was visited by their prophet Isaiah, who told him he was not yet going to die. Hezekiah did not believe him and asked him for a sign of proof. Isaiah said, "Do you want the sun to go about 10 degrees forward?" Hezekiah answered, "It's nothing for the sun to go ahead 10 degrees. Let the shadows return backward 10 degrees. Make the sun go backward 10 degrees. Isaiah spoke with the Lord, and the Lord brought the shadow 10 degrees backward, according to the Bible. The sundials at the time all agreed, and indeed the sun did actually return backwards. 10 degrees is exactly 40 minutes. 23 hours and 20 minutes in Joshua plus 40 minutes in 2 Kings equals precisely 24 hours. And that's a precise amount computer calculations said were the missing day. The computer now could log all orbits without any problem so long as as far into the future as the scientists wished. I remember that following this repair of this glitch, there was a wave of renewed interest in Christianity on the part of many science-minded friends. And yes, this documented even encouraged me in my quest to know the truth and played a role in my decision to become a Christian ordained minister. End of report.
Thank you.
Thought you might enjoy that little bit of history.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much.
You all just take a moment and just close your eyes
Yes, please.
and take in a deep breath. Creator, thank you for this time to show us what is going to be, and what was, and know that they're all working inside you right now at this time. And so it is.
And so it is.
is.